Okay, this problem is the beginning of video 2, so if you haven't looked at video 1, please go back if you need help. But video 2, you need to do 4 steps. 1 is you need to find the ratio. 2, you need to find the run and the rise. You can use a formula for slope. 3, afterwards, you have to, step 3, you have to, after multiply your run value and rise value with the ratio to both of these, times the ratio. And then whatever you get, you're going to add to the coordinates to the first point. So whatever you get here, you're going to add to the x value. And whatever you get here, you're going to add to the y value. So I'll go ahead and do it over here. So first of all, the ratio is equal to 3 over 7. 3 because that's the first value, and 7 because the sum of 3 and 4 is 7. So if you write 3/4, that's wrong. That's step 1. Step 2, I need to find the rise over run. So the slope is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So here this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So my y2 to find the slope is 10. My y1 is 3 right here. And then x2 is 8 minus x1 is negative 6. Well, minus the negative changes to a positive. So now I have 7 over 14. Don't reduce. So remember that slope goes rise over run. Well, I want to write it as run rise. So for step 2, I'm going to write my run first, which is 14, and then my rise, which is 7. Step 3 now tells us to take our run and our rise and multiply it by the ratio. So what was the ratio we found? We found it as 3/7. So 14 times 3/7 and 7 times 3/7. So if you use a calculator, 14 times 3/7 is equal to 6, and 7 times 3/7 over here is equal to 3. So last step tells us, step 4, to take the coordinates from your first point, which are negative 6, 3, and add the values you found. So run represents your x's, and rise represents your y's. So this value gets added to your x. So if you add negative 6 with 6, you're going to get 0, p for point, 0. And if you add the value you found over here to your y value, you're going to end up getting 6, because 3 plus 3 is 6. Question numbers 10, 11, and 12. You're using sine, cosine, or tangent. Now, be careful because they're asking you to find tan and sine of angle L, but then 11 asks you for angle J. So I'm going to do 10 and 12 first, and I'll go back to 11. So if I'm going based on angle L, because both of these require angle L, the opposite side is JK, which measures 7. The hypotenuse is JL, which measures 25, which means that my adjacent side would be the last side. So tangent of angle L is equal to opposite over adjacent. So my O value is 7, and my adjacent value is 24. For cosine, remember I'm going to skip this because I'm going to go to sine first. So for sine, sine of angle L is equal to opposite divided by the hypotenuse. While the opposite value is 7, and the hypotenuse value is 25. So now I'm done using angle L, which means that I need to erase my opposite and adjacent side. The hypotenuse is going to stay the same. But now if I go based on angle L, the opposite side is now 24, KL, which means that the adjacent side has to be JK. So cosine of angle J is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent value is 7, and the hypotenuse value is 25. You don't have to change these. These are correct as a fraction. They're not asking you to find the measurement of the angle, so you don't have to find the measurement of the angle. Okay, so that's 10, 11, 12. Question 13, you have to figure out if you're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. And the reason why is because we don't know the value of the right side or the bottom. But in the problem, they're asking us how high is the kite off the ground. So they're telling us to let this side equal x. So based on angle 25, this is the opposite side. Across the right angle, this is the hypotenuse. And the adjacent side, I don't know. So because I don't know the adjacent side, I can't use cosine and I can't use tangent because you need to know the adjacent values. The adjacent values are a's. So that means I have to use sine. So I'm going to use sine of 25 degrees equals the opposite value, which we said is x, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 250. So now I'm going to solve for x by doing the opposite of dividing, which is to multiply by 250. So if I multiply both sides of my equation by 250 to get the x by itself, here you use a calculator. So once you use the calculator, 250 times sine of 25 would equal 105.65, and the units are feet. So that would be the height of the kite. Question 14 is asking you to find the tangent ratio. Tangent ratio is TOA. So tangent ratio to find angle F. So based on angle F, this is the opposite side, this is the hypotenuse side, and the last side is adjacent. Well, they're telling me to use tangent to find angle F. So tangent is the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. We learned in 18.1 and 18.2 that in order to get rid of a trig function to find the measurement of an angle, you multiply by his inverse. So I'm going to multiply both sides by the inverse of tangent negative of tangent so that tan and the inverse can cancel out. So I'm left with angle F equals tan inverse of 10/3. So from here, you're going to type it into the calculator. So once you type it into the calculator, you're going to get that angle F measures 73.3 degrees. Question 11. If JI measures 10, what's JK? Well, since this is an isosceles triangle, that means that the base angles have to be 45. So if you remember, it goes leg, leg, leg. I mean, not leg, not for the last one. The last one's hypotenuse. There's no such thing as 3 legs. Hypotenuse. The hypotenuse value, if you remember, is x squared root of 2. The legs are both x's. So this value that's given to us is the hypotenuse. So since the hypotenuse is x squared root of 2, I'm going to make him equal to the value of the hypotenuse. Solve for x. I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is to divide by square root of 2. And if you type this part into your calculator, it'll give you 5 square root of 2 simplified. That means both the side legs will measure the same, 5 square root of 2. Question 16, I need to find the area. So I'm going to label my sides. Little a, little c, little b. Since I don't know the measurement of little c, leg c, that means that the formula for area is 1/2 times a times b times sine of angle c. So I'm just going to substitute my a value. Little a is 13, little b is 7, and sine of angle c, big C, which is 38. Now this is all calculator work. And once you type it into the calculator, you're going to get 28.01 units squared. My units are centimeters, so centimeters squared. Number 17, 17 is the one that I have to use two identity properties. Sine theta equals cosine theta times tan theta. And after I use that property, I'm going to use cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta equals 1. So first of all, in the problem, they tell us that tan theta is equal to negative 1.88. So I'm going to substitute it. So I have sine theta equals cosine theta times tan theta. Tan theta is negative 1.88. Well, I'm going to multiply cosine theta with negative 1.88. This is the same as writing it as negative 1.88 cosine theta because this is multiplication. It's like saying what's x times 5? That's the same as 5x. So cosine theta times negative 1.88 is the same as writing negative 1.88 times cosine theta. Well, I know what sine theta is. Sine theta is equal to these two values here that are together multiplied. So I'm going to plug them into cosine squared theta. So cosine squared theta plus, not to cosine squared theta. I'm going to plug them in to sine squared theta. My bad. So this says sine theta, so he has to go in here. I wrote the formula reverse. Let me rewrite it so you guys don't get confused. So sine theta squared plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Okay, that's better. So since this says sine theta, I'm going to plug it in for sine theta. So sine theta squared plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Sine theta is equal to this value. So I'm going to write it in here. And now I'm going to square both of these. So negative 1.88 squared and cosine theta squared. So I know cosine theta squared will be cosine theta squared. But negative 1.88 squared is going to equal 3.53. Plus cosine squared theta equals 1. I just rewrote the rest. This cosine squared theta has an invisible 1. So now these two are like terms. They both have cosine squared theta. So I'm going to add the coefficients. 1 plus 3.53 is 4.53. Rewrite cosine squared theta equal to 1. I want to solve for cosine squared theta, so I need to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So then I'm going to get cosine squared theta is equal to 1 divided by 4.53, which will give me 0.22. But I don't want cosine squared theta, I want cosine. So now I have to get rid of the square by taking the square root. So the square root of 0.22 ends up equaling 0.47 if I round. So the question is asking us which one's correct. Well, the answer has to be 0.47 or 469. This guy has 469, but my answer says cosine. This does not say cosine, so he's out. So if I look at the answers with cosine, neither one of those is right. I'm only left with one, and I know the answer is going to be C. But just to make sure, I'm going to go back to the beginning of my problem. And right here, where it says sine theta equals cosine theta times tan theta, which is negative 1.88, I'm going to take my value from cosine and I'm going to plug it in there. So sine theta is equal to, what was cosine theta? Oh yeah, it was 0.47 times tan theta, which is negative 1.88. So now if I multiply these two values times negative 1.88, I will end up getting sine theta is equal to negative 0.883. And guess what? That's our answer. Good luck. Make sure you study. Come prepared with last minute questions. I'm going to review for 5 to 10 minutes max. All right.